Corp Insurance. This is Jerome. How can I help you?
Yeah, I would like to make a claim on my homeowner's insurance.
Damn, for real? What happened?
Basically, a plumber came in, beat my ass, set my house on fire.
Oh, shit, that's crazy, bro. But we won't cover that.
What you mean you don't cover it?
We don't cover house fires from plumbers.
What the fuck you mean you don't cover house fires from plumbers? What if my house was set on fire?
Yeah, if your house was just set on fire, that'd be one thing, but it was set on fire by a plumber. So for that kind of fire, we do not cover that shit, sir. I'm sorry.
What kind of specific ass dumb ass shit is that, bro? My house was set on fucking fire. Why does it matter if it was set on fire by a fucking plumber?
Because we don't cover that shit, sir. We do not cover that shit. All right?
Alright, fuck it. My house was just set on fire. No plumber. No plumber.
Bro, you just told me you had a fucking plumber set your house on fire.
Bro, he was dressed like a plumber. I don't fucking know.
It was 4 seconds ago. You can't fucking backtrack in the middle of the fucking conversation, bro. Come on.
Bro, I'm gonna just hang up and call back a lie.
How the fuck you gonna tell me you gonna call back a lie, bro? We not, bro. I'm not covering that shit. I'm the only motherfucker work here anyway, so you gonna get me again, bro. So I'm saying right now, we not
fuck
covering.
you. I knew I shouldn't have fucking signed up with y'all bitch ass.
Fuck you too. Is there anything else I can help with your bitch ass today? All right, so after the phone call, if you could just take this brief survey about your service and fucking leave a back.
Motherfucker, no, I ain't doing that shit. What the fuck?
Hey, Daddy.
Oh, fuck no, bitch. You gotta go.
Hey, quit playing. Come over here and smash, bro.
Bitch, no. And who the fuck tied you up?
I did. We got unfinished business. Now come over here and put it in.
Bitch, me and you is over. You got your crazy ass dude coming over here burning down my house. Are you out your fucking mind?
You knew what it was when we got together. Now let me get that notorious DIC.
What the fuck is a DIC?
Yeah?
Bitch, no, it's not. That's not how you spell it. You know how to spell?
Who cares, bro? I do not have to know how to spell. I'm a fucking princess. Spelling is for poor people.
Bitch, get your dumb ass up out of here.
Hey, where you going? Come fuck. What are you doing? At least get me down.
Bitch, my big ass getting up there to get you down. You got yourself up there to get your ass down. Use that dumb ass dress as a parachute.
It's me, Mario, motherfucker.
Oh, shit.
You thought you was gonna take my bitch again,
Bro,
but I have
listen,
to see these
I
hands.
don't
Now you
want
gotta
her,
get your
bro.
ass rebeat.
Look, I don't want her. You can have her. I did, bro. You look, bro.
You sound like a bitch, Bowser.
Bro, look, I'm coming to you as a man, bro. Like,
Man, you're a turtle sword.
Hey, can you tell this motherfucker what's going on?
Nope, should've threw me the dick when you had a chance.
Bro, just take her and leave. I don't want no smoke, bro.
Bro, you got smoke, bro. I got a fire flower. I'm about to set everything on motherfucking fire. I'm gonna take this mushroom and I'm gonna tear this whole motherfucking house down. Because when I take mushrooms, I get big as fuck for some reason. I don't know, I think it's the gas. But you have officially fucked up.
Hey people, I see you smiling, but did you actually hit that like button though? Well, if you want to check out the next part, you're gonna have to go to my boy Ace Vane's page for that. He got some other funny shit on there too. So yeah, go check it out.
What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, because I told you guys that we weren't done, even though we had that epic moment that happened. The ending of this comic, I'm excited to see how you guys respond, because it's amazing. So, of course, this picks up in the immediate aftermath of the great big huge epic moment that we just saw. Adult Franklin Richards basically making Galactus's herald and then fighting the Mad Celestials, right? It was just ridiculously awesome. Now, of course, Valeria Richards, ever the sourpuss in the Fantastic Four comics, is really kind of giving us this monologue of everything that had gone on, talking about Franklin Richards facing off against the Celestials and the whole thing with Galactus, and she really is just kind of irritated at the fact that while it was all going down, she wasn't really doing anything. She was just kind of sitting there watching it all happen. The truth about Valeria is that as a kid, and any parent who knows this will probably tell you, kids are egocentric. They think the universe revolves around them, right? The whole world revolves around them. But one of the things that she kind of talks about and really muses to herself is she doesn't really like her older self. She feels like there's something off about her. And her older self is just kind of like, right back at you, kid. Like, I don't really like you either. There really isn't a major thing going on here, but it is kind of a funny moment. The other part about this is that you have Kid Franklin talking to his older self. The conversation between the two of them is really, really cool, because like Franklin, of course, approaches it from a kid's perspective, right? What would you do if you were a little kid and your future self showed up and basically crushed like some Celestials? You'd be amazed by it, right? You'd be like, we totally crushed those space gods, and I've got a beard. Is it itchy? And of course, adult Franklin is just like, yes, it is, because even with all my powers, I can't solve the one thing that plagues all men everywhere, an itchy beard. No, he does, his beard doesn't itch. But in reality, that's why I don't really keep a beard too much, man, because that damn thing itches like you wouldn't believe. But the thing about this is that, of course, he asked, like, can I call you Mr. Franklin? And that's when the response of his older self is yes, as long as I can call you Kid Franklin. So for those of you guys who are always wondering where the moniker or nickname for Franklin Richards came from and people calling him Kid Franklin, this is it. And that's how that works when it comes to Marvel Comics. For those of you guys who are unfamiliar with it, usually there's just kind of a colloquial name for a character that just takes hold and everybody just starts calling them that. It's just sort of the way those things work. And so, of course, the funny thing is he asked him, he's like, can I tell you a secret? And his older self is like, yeah, sure. And younger Franklin, Kid Franklin, is like, I always wanted my own Galactus. And of course, his older self is like, yes, I know. Now, this is a cool moment because one of the things that we've always talked about when it comes to Jonathan Hickman is that he's very much on building things up, right? The idea of Franklin always having wanted his own Galactus, that comes to bear in Secret Wars. If you guys remember that story with Jonathan Hickman, there was a point where literally Franklin just sits in Galactus's helmet, right? He's like, he has his own Galactus. That's how this works, right? That's where this comes from. So it's the small little things that Jonathan Hickman always brings back in his story. Sometimes it serves no major plot point. It's just an offhanded remark that a character made at some point along the line. And it's really just a nice little moment to be like, I remember that when Franklin said he wanted his own Galactus. He finally has it, right? And it's like, it's a cool thing, right? It's just a cool little thing that goes on there. And so, of course, following this, what ends up happening is that, well, now it's time for cleanup duty, right? Basically heading back to New York, getting the city all sorted out. Galactus approaches Franklin Richards. So while everybody ends up taking off to the city of New York, adult Franklin stays behind. Now, this leads to one of the most important conversations between the two. And if you've ever read anything about adult Franklin Richards, you have heard of this conversation happening. That as Franklin and Galactus are basically spending time with each other, just kind of hanging out there, Galactus sort of muses and says, one day it will all end, right? Suns will die and worlds will wither as the universe begins to cool. The heat death of the everything. For so long, I have thought I would face it by myself. And Franklin responds in saying, but now you know better. He says, I will be there standing beside you. We will watch as all that has been will become something new, the birth of a new universe. He says, still, buck up, big guy. We've got billions of years until we have to worry about that. Of course, Franklin is immortal. Now, there's been a couple instances in Marvel Comics when really Marvel has just sort of brought back the idea of Franklin's immortality. A great example of this is during Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers run, when Captain America is whisked through time by the Time Stone. Of course, he ends up in the future, basically at the end of all things, where he's brought below Kane the Conqueror and his alter egos, Immortus and Iron Lad. And they basically say, like, everything has to end. There's no conceivable way for you to stop the collapse of the multiverse. So to make sure you don't screw up the time stream, we're going to hold you here. Of course, Captain America ends up escaping anyway, and there's nothing Kang or Immortus or Iron Lad can do. If you're really excited about that, we do have a playlist with Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers on it. Because we've remastered Fantastic Four, we'll likely combine these into a new remastered full story, so you can kind of go forward and enjoy it in its modern form. But the thing about this is that Franklin's immortality came to bear when Captain America was whisked through time and encountered Franklin Richards thousands of years into the future. And Franklin he looks just like this, right? Now, the cool thing about that is Galactus chimes in and says, I feared the return of solitude, of being alone forever. I never imagined this is what you would become. Now, this is a great moment because one of the things to know about Franklin's history is over the years in Marvel Comics, his vast reality warping powers started off innocuous, right? It was the old Fantastic Four story, which I think was in issue 145. I'm not going to swear to it, but it's the one where Franklin's playing with a Rubik's Cube. He gets frustrated. There's a commercial on the TV that says, why don't you just grow up? And he subconsciously ages himself into an adult by using his reality warping powers. It was the first time we'd really seen him use his powers on that level. After that, it just got bigger and grander. So then you go into like Heroes Reborn, when Franklin Richards resurrects basically all the heroes who died fighting Onslaught. He resurrects them from the dead and then places them in a pocket universe that he created that he carries around in the form of a ball. Of course, they're all brought back during Heroes Return, but then you go into the Abraxas saga where he resurrects Galactus from the dead the first time. So it's one of these things where over the years in Marvel, Galactus has actually watched Franklin. He's watched the things he's done and he's seen what he's capable of, but he had never really imagined that Franklin Richards would be able to achieve this level of power. And it's not so much what Franklin Richards did here, it's Galactus combining the sum total of all things that Franklin has done, and the analysis that the Mad Celestials came up with, which is that he's beyond Omega level. The reality, and depending on how you want to slice it, Galactus and Franklin are equal in power. But there are stories that have been done that have indicated that Franklin is actually beyond Galactus in terms of power, that he's more powerful than Galactus is. And so, of course, Franklin, in response to Galactus' statement, simply says, well, you'll have to wait a little longer. Union occurs further down the road. So the idea is that when the universe collapses and it dies, and then it explodes with a big bang into a new universe, that Galactus and Franklin will be the two last living things in existence. They will merge and they'll be reborn as a new cosmic entity that's a combination of both. Now, of course, once they all get back to New York City, while the Fantastic Four do clean up their mess, they do it kind of unceremoniously. They open a portal to the negative zone, and basically all the stuff that's been destroyed and all the cars that have been trashed just get thrown into the negative zone. So literally, they're just stuffing everything into a multiversal closet, more or less. And it's kind of funny to see because, of course, the Baxter Building is reconstituted, and in fact, it's modified a little bit so that the younger kids in the Future Foundation, because they're composed of like different races or different parts of the world, that they all have their own individual habitat where they can basically reside and live in a kind of comfort, right? So it's cool to see that it's been modified in that capacity. Now, of course, the next thing that goes on is they all basically take off into space, because what's happened is that Reed Richards and them have created something called the Foundation, right? The Orbital Space Station Education Facility in geosynchronous orbit above the Baxter Building. Basically meaning that as the Earth rotates, it rotates with it, and it's always directly above the Baxter Building in Marvel Comics. So it's actually a cool little thing, like a direct satellite. But this is where they'll receive a lot of their education. And so following this, what you end up doing is having the Fantastic Four dealing with Valeria. Now, this is a really, really cool moment here, because what goes on is that before adult Franklin returns, that as Valeria is talking to the Fantastic Four, they're like, okay, we need to have a conversation, right? Reed and Susan are like, we need to have a conversation. And one of the things that had gone on, of course, as you guys notice over the course of this run, there was a lot of deceit being performed or being done by Valeria. She was lying to people, tricking people, and all of it was done in service of a greater cause. But the point that Reed and Susan are hitting at is, this cannot be a regular thing. Of course, Ben Grimm chimes in and is just kind of like, nobody likes bad girls, kiddo. And then Johnny, of course, is like, well, I mean, you know, like, I mean, that ain't always the case, Ben. Sometimes bad girls are good, you know, like. But of course, it's a funny thing, because she ultimately makes a promise where she tells them, yes, no more secrets. I won't hide anything from you anymore. Wrong, because here's what happens. If you guys recall, right, when everything was popping off and you had like the Mad Celestials who were still on the other side of the portal before they had arrived to Earth, that you had this moment where where basically Dr. Doom was going to keep the one, or going to be the one that would basically buy them time so they could get to the portal on the other side and close the portal off. Dr. Doom's still trapped over there, right? He's still trapped there. What Valeria had told him is, she said, find a way, Uncle Doom. Find a way to stay alive. There's something in there, something that's worth the cost of you stepping in and buying us time. It's why Dr. Doom did this. He literally stayed here because there's a benefit to it. And so where the Mad Celestials were more focused on incapacitating Doom because they didn't really see him as like a credible threat, they effectively knocked him out. As soon as he was done, they focused on trying to find a way through the portal, because that was their main effort, right? I mean, literally, time was ticking. The portal was closing, right? So it was really more of just running out of time, as opposed to like, this guy Dr. Doom's annoying, let's just kill him right now, right? And Doom's powerful enough to be able to hold off Celestials, even if not outright destroy them. But because he's survived, he makes his way through the Citadel of Doom. You guys remember at the very beginning of the story when we learned about the Council of Reeds, what they were doing. The Citadel is not totally destroyed, right? Dr. Doom finds one of the seats on the throne, right? The 3 seats that were held by those different versions of Reed. He ends up reconstituting, or at least taking out the other 2 seats. He has one for himself, and that's it. And as he sits down, he puts on one of the Infinity Gauntlets, he picks up one of the swords, and then out of nowhere, he sees someone ask the question, Doom. And that's literally when all these lobotomized Dr. Dooms start ascending out of the rubble and literally just kind of like worshiping Dr. Doom himself. And as they start shouting his name, Dr. Doom is like, yes. And he just sits down on the throne, surrounded by those who would worship him as a god, and simply says, here, I can build. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. The Parliament of Doom has arisen. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
You the son?
Grandson.
Just a crazy old biznatch who ran over my brother.
Abuelita, todo está bien. Ok, yo me encargo de todo.
Problemas.
Que súbele el volumen para que la puedas escuchar.
Sí.
You want money?
Yeah!
You called her biznatch?
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk dollar amounts for what you did.
Biznatch.
The task force is designated Operation Kingbreaker.
Kingbreaker. That makes me the king! Woohoo! I say Caramos. They walked into my house. They disrespected my abuelita. They called her biznatch! And they just walk! Ah!
Think about their mother.
I swear on their mama! One leg each. Let the man count. Okay. Did you see that? See what? That old man just hit my car. Hey, Gramps. You just hit my car. Check out Mr. Magoo here. You see that car that you parked your piece of shit next to? That's mine. You just ran into it. You see me sweating, bitch? Wallet. Your life worth $400.
Hey, Stuco, time to bounce.
Yeah, go. Yeah. One lucky old man.
The hell? Let go! Let go!
Let go! Let go!
Let go!
Let go! That all you got?
Tuco, what's happening, my brother?
Booyah! Wow!
This kicks like a mule with his balls wrapped in duct tape. Bullshit.
This is a consignment operation. You don't trust me?
I don't need your punk ass to vouch for me. You brought me some really clean crystal. Woo.
If you really want your money up front?
Nobody moves crystal in the South Valley but me, bitch!
Let me get this straight. I beat the piss out of your mule boy. And then you walk in here and you bring me more men? Woo! Are you fucking nuts? You got balls. I'll give you that. That crystal, it sold faster than $10 ass in TJ. What did you say? Local bald motherfucker. What is this? It's blue. Ah, tight, yeah. Blue, yellow, pink. Whatever, man, just keep bringing me that.
Just remember who you're working for.
What did you say? Are you saying that they're stupid? Heisenberg says, relax. I'm relaxed. Wow! Damn, man, look at that, look! That's messed up. Okay, Heisenberg! Next week.
What did they do to you? What did you do to my deal?
Nothing.
Shit! My deal is not live! Are you mad dogging that deal? How's it my fault that little bitch did not know his place? I can see the future, you know? It's this gift that I have deep inside my head. Gonzo snitched to the cops! That brother, son of a bitch! I trusted him like a brother! I was good to him, I was good! I see Gonzo, I'm gonna shoot! I'm gonna stop his eye for a heavy bang! Every time I kill, it's gonna be like a legend of myself! You never trust the people that you love!
What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. So let's just get right into it, man, because dude, the ending of this story, man, son. It's like one of the greatest moments ever in the history of Marvel Comics. Check this out. So what this initially does is it picks up with the Future Foundation. The reason why the art looks like this is because the story is designed to be told from a child's perspective. So the art reflects a kind of childlike art. Now, one of the things that you guys may recall is that in the previous stories that we did regarding Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, that what had happened is the Kree had invaded Earth. They had launched attack against Earth. While that was happening, the forces of Annihilus were basically launching their attack in order to allow the Annihilation Wave to enter in from the negative zone. So it was a multi-pronged strike, albeit that both forces were unaware of the other. But the kicker about all this is that Valeria Richards did exactly what she was supposed to do, which was hit the panic button and teleport the Future Foundation from the Baxter Building to a safe location, which turns out to be Latveria, where Dr. Doom's at. But the thing about this is that with this meeting here, you have this conversation between Valeria and Nathaniel Richards, the father of Reed. Now remember, Nathaniel comes from the future, but nobody's supposed to know, right? No one's supposed to know he's from the future. Valeria figured it out, and she figured it out because of the fact that she's so incredibly intelligent. So while Nathaniel thought he was being secretive, Valeria figured out all the clues. And so it's one of those things where she's like, you shouldn't be going around doing that. And he's like, why? And she's like, because you could screw everything up. Temporal anomalies, cascading events, collapsing time streams, like you should know all of this stuff. You're a time traveler. And he's like, well, that's not necessarily exactly how it happens. Besides, if you knew that and you had figured that out, why did you go and make a secret deal with Dr. Doom? And then she's like, well, I guess you knew about that because you're from the future. And he's like, no, because all hope lies in Doom. Nathaniel says, I sent the future Franklin to you. Like, I'm the one who sent him to you so that he could have that conversation and give you that piece of information so that you could hold on to it for when it was necessary to implement that, i.e. your meeting with Victor Von Doom. And so it's a cool thing because he asks her, do you remember the rest, right? The dead must not be forgotten. The future man must return to save the past, right? Kind of hitting at this idea that Nathaniel is the future man. So he tells her, this is what we're going to do. And Nathaniel and Valeria basically form a plan. Now, when they go and they meet with Christophe Renard, the adopted son of Dr. Doom, and Dr. Doom himself, Christophe is totally like flabbergasted by this. Like, wait a minute, what is your idea here? Now, of course, you have the alternate version of Reed Richards who's here, kind of the last surviving member of the Council of Reeds, the ones that sort of initiated all of this in the first place. And again, it's one of these things where this guy has control of Dr. Doom. Right? Remember, he slapped the collar around Dr. Doom's neck so that if Dr. Doom disobeys what this alternate version of Reed tells him, he'll lobotomize Doom on the spot, right? Like instantaneously, he'll take him out. The reality here and what they intend to do is to go back to the bridge, to basically reopen the bridge and then face off against the Mad Celestials and find a way to destroy them, right? To defeat the Mad Celestials so they never arrive on Earth. Because remember, all of this is because of Reed, that you had the Council of Reeds and you have Reed Richards himself. The main Marvel Universe Reed opened the portal. The Council of Reeds greeted him and then he traveled with the Council and learned that there's basically this group of Reed Richards across the multiverse who abandoned their families. That what they did is they solved problems across the multiverse. They turned entire universes into nothing more than just crop farms where they grow food for other universes to feed whole other universes. That's their thing. But one of those versions of Reed drew the attention of a universe's version of the Celestials Celestials who'd gone crazy with power and forced everybody to worship them as gods. Once they became aware of that reed, and by extension, a portal that would grant them access to the multiverse, they did what anybody with extreme levels of power and no real checks and balances would do. They tried to expand that sphere of influence. That's what led to the fight with the Council of Reeds, and that is why we're where we are right now, is because of Reed opening the portal and meeting with the Council in the first place. Now, we are going to get a little more information about this, but one of the things Valeria does is she sneaks into the vault and she basically takes the ultimate nullifier. Now, for those of you guys who don't know about this thing is nuts. The ultimate nullifier is one of the most powerful weapons in existence. And in fact, Jonathan Hickman's going to clarify the ultimate nullifier to a degree. But the nullifier is an object, a device that if you use it and you channel it at somebody, you can wipe them from existence as if they never existed in the first place. It's crazy, right? It's just one of the most bonkers things ever in Marvel Comics. But the thing about this is that once they get to the bridge, they ultimately activate it and they're like, it's time to go in, right? It's time to enter this and see what's on the other side. Because the last time they were there, the Reeds were fleeing for their lives, right? Like they were just running to escape death from the Mad Celestials who were annihilating everything. Now, once they get in there, the Mad Celestials are still there, right? They're still present. Now, here's the thing to understand, right? You might be asking yourself, because for, I guess you could call it our time, like months have passed, like maybe almost a year has passed. So the question you have to ask yourself is, have the Celestials just been sitting there, like just standing there for like months, maybe even a year? The answer is yes and no. When it comes to this place, right, the Council of Reeds, it exists outside of space and time. So time doesn't apply here. So as far as the Mad Celestials are here, like these guys basically ran through a second ago and just came back out again, right? Like no real time has passed. That's how things work here, and that's why they've been there this entire time. But the crazy thing about this is that what it does is it jumps back to the meeting with Valeria and Nathaniel, and the two of them are kind of talking about everything that's going on. And what's happening here is they're talking about something called catastrophe theory, that the way that it's explained by Nathaniel is a series of ever worsening ruinous events that individually represent a system-wide threat, but when combined constitute the permanent obliteration of said system. The system in this case is all of mankind. That what we're looking at here, right, the things that are taking place here, the annihilation wave entering into the fray after being released, the Kree launching their attack against Earth when Black Bolt basically escaped the fault, and essentially the Supreme Intelligence realized the Black Bolt of the Inhumans was still alive and wanted to wipe out the rest of the Inhumans. Reed going through the gate, all that kind of stuff, the War of the Four Cities, everything just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and is all pointing to the complete and total obliteration of all of humanity. Now, of course, this leads to the most logical question, right? Like Valeria says, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but is it possible there are some holes in your theory? And Nathaniel asks, how so? And she says, well, why don't we just work to prevent one of the earlier bad things? And he interprets that to her saying, you mean stop the cascading nature of the event before it begins, i.e. stop Reed Richards from going through the gate. And the response to Nathaniel is, that cannot be done. There are some things that happen in this universe and in every universe that are constants. They always take place. There was no preventing the return of Black Bolt, and there was no preventing the Kree race from realizing Black Bolt had returned, that the Inhumans still existed in the universe and trying to destroy them. The war between the Kree and the Inhumans would always lead to the extermination of Earth. It's inevitable. And the only way that war can be held at bay is by Johnny Storm's annihilation wave. The reasons for it happening will vary. They won't always be the same. But in every single universe across the multiverse, at some point in time, the possibility of a dying Earth will spark the return of Galactus, and the Mad Celestials will attempt to destroy the universe as it holds the last reed of the Council of Reeds from them, right? Everything else, the creation of the Future Foundation, the War of the Four Cities, all of these things have only created more favorable conditions to do what must be done. And that's the kicker here, right? That those are all absolute things. These things always happen, that there's no avoiding it. And so that's when Valeria asked, then like, what's the best we can hope for? And the response to Nathaniel is to spread these events out, right? To ensure that like the invasion of the Annihilation Wave and the attack of the Kree and their war with the Inhumans and Galactus and the Mad Celestials, that it all just doesn't happen back to back to back to back to like all at one time, right? Because in every other timeline, that's seemingly when it happened. It all happened at once. The Kree launched their attack on Earth and went to war with the Inhumans as Galactus showed up when the Mad Celestials arrived. Like it would always lead to the destruction of all of Earth and everybody on it. That always seems to happen. Now, this is one of the cool things about that, is because what we end up doing is jumping back to where everybody else is, right? Jumping back to like the bridge or to the Council of Reed Citadel, whatever you want to call it, and the battle with the Mad Celestials. Now, initially, they won't let Dr. Doom do his thing. This alternate version of of Reed, right, the last survivor of the Council of Reeds outside of the main Marvel Universe, that this guy believes that he can take all of this on his own. But the response of Valeria is, no, you have to let Dr. Doom go. This is the reason why she took the ultimate nullifier, because she needed a backup plan. She wanted to make sure this version of Reed would do exactly what she told him to. Remember, all hope lies in Doom. If Doom has an inhibitor collar around his neck, and at any given moment he could just be lobotomized, there ain't a whole lot of hope there. But like if Dr. Doom is completely freed and he's allowed to do whatever it is that he needs to do, then all hope lies in Doom. Hence the reason for the nullifier. So once that's done and Dr. Doom is freed from his control, then it's on like Donkey Kong. Because one of the coolest things that goes on here is we switch to Franklin. Little Franklin Richards, this little kid. Now I told you guys, Franklin Richards is powerful. He's ridiculously OP, and he always has been. The funny thing about this is he doesn't know how powerful he is. So what he says as he's talking to his friend Leech is he says, it's weird, I can hear them thinking and I think they're sick or something, like, what should we do? So Franklin goes and talks to the Mad Celestials. Now, when they analyze him, what they realize is just how powerful Franklin is. Franklin Richards could annihilate these guys. That's exactly their fear and their concern. Now, this is how powerful Franklin is, that literally they try to blast Franklin Richards with energy. He basically blocks it, and then the energy turns to flowers. And he was like, why do you guys have flowers growing out of your head? Literally, he altered reality so that their attack was useless. Not only was their attack useless, it turned into something arbitrary. But here's the big thing behind this, and this is why I say guys like Mad Jim Jaspers are really, really powerful, because he can alter reality, but he has nothing on Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is outside of all universal space. He's outside of space and time. He's literally in this citadel. The rules and the laws of physics do not apply here. So he literally is just a living embodiment of a godlike being. Now, the other part about this is that the Celestials, realizing how powerful he is, decide to attack his consciousness. And what they tell him is that you, Franklin Richards, are so powerful that you will live to see the end of the universe. When that time comes, we don't know what will happen, but you will outlive all things in existence if you choose to, right? The downside to this is you will outlive everyone you know and love, and those individuals who do know you will learn to hate you because of the fact that you're so powerful and you're not bound by age. It's just going to be a fundamental part of who you are. Now, we know that to be the case, partly because of another video that we're going to do with Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four after probably here in the next couple weeks, but also because of like a history of the Marvel Universe, that comic book line that Marvel wrote because of my awesome series that I made, that in turn establishes that Galactus and Franklin will be the two last living things in existence. At least that was the case until we got Al Ewing's indestructible, or what is it, Immortal Hulk, when basically the one below all kills everything in existence and then kills Franklin and kills Galactus and then just absorbs their power and lives on in the next universe and then kills everything there. But the important thing here is that in this moment when Franklin's able to fight the Celestials off, they fire off a few of their fingers, which in turn are able to kind of hold the portal open. Now, the thing about this is that while it does lead to the rest of the Future Foundation basically vacating and getting out as fast as they can, that you have this conversation between Valeria and Dr. Doom. Now, there is something that's said here, right? There is a very important thing that's said here. We won't find out what it is right now. Instead, Dr. Doom tells her, get out of here. I will basically do what I can and I will hold these guys off. Now, she's like, how do you know that you'll survive? Like, how do you know that you'll make it? And the response of Doom is, because I am Doom, destroyer of worlds. What gods dare stand against me, right? Who would be so foolish as to challenge the power of Dr. Doom, which is just like a ridiculously amazing moment. Now, the reality here is that jumping back to the meeting that happened with Nathaniel and Valeria, they kind of go to like this sort of abandoned citadel and they have this really, really cool conversation. Now, the way this plays out is that they're basically looking at the series of events as they've happened. And what Nathaniel says is a thing is going to happen soon. And when it does, that will be our saving grace. That's our ace in the hole. That's the means by which we will survive all of this. The problem is by the time all this stuff happens, right? Everything going on with like the Mad Celestials and all of that, if we don't buy time, then we're going to be dead by the time that thing happens. And when that thing happens, it'll be too late to save any of us. So you have to find a way to buy us 27 minutes, Valeria. You have to find a way to make that happen. That's the reason why Dr. Doom is basically staying behind. That's the cool thing that goes on here, is because one of the things that takes place is you basically move or transition over to Dr. Doom and that alternate version of Reed who are facing off against the Mad Celestials. Now they're doing what they can, but the funny thing is that in order for Dr. Doom to be freed by that version of Reed demanded the ultimate nullifier, which was given to him by Valeria Richards. And so what he does is in channeling the ultimate nullifier, we end up getting the caveat that goes along with this, that what Jonathan Hickman does is transition us back to the Council of Reeds when that version of of Reed had attained the ultimate nullifier, and he was warned by the other members in the council that thing will kill anybody who uses it. But one of the Reeds chimes in and says that's actually not true. It's a myth that the nullifier, while being the most powerful weapon in the universe, will always destroy the person using it. It can be used. The device requires complete focus and alignment of mind and purpose. If you fail to have that, it will destroy you. And that's exactly what happens. This version of Reed, in using the ultimate nullifier, his mind starts to wonder to what they could have done, how they could have fixed things. But because he loses his focus, he's destroyed by the ultimate nullifier that he's wielding, and the Mad Celestials continue to exist. So with Dr. Doom doing what he can against these guys and literally trying to hold them off, he basically just tells them, like, do whatever it is that you feel like you can do. There's nothing you can do that can destroy me. But the funny thing here is that as the bridge begins to falter, the Mad Celestials, in a moment of dire just straits, attack Dr. Doom, and he seemingly holds it off. The problem with this is that as everything seems to wind down, and while it does seem like the day is saved, the portal starts closing off. One of the Mad Celestials reaches in and pulls the portal apart, and in doing that, allows the Mad Celestials to enter into the main Marvel Universe. So at the end of the last video that we covered, where we talked about the Mad Celestials had arrived, this is how they got there, right? This is how they arrived there. It's really one of the most important parts of the story, and it's one that we didn't cover when we originally covered Hickman's Fantastic Four, which I kind of wish was something that we had done. But following this, we pick up with the Future Foundation as they're basically rescued by the Power Pack. For those of you guys who don't know who the Power Pack are, they're not overly important to this story. It's just basically a bunch of like really young kids operating as superheroes. But the whole thing behind this is that while you have like Franklin and the other members of really the Future Foundation and the Power Pack that are making their way towards what is in effect Saul's Anvil, the weapon that was constructed by those surviving members of the Council of Reeds in order to destroy the Mad Celestials, it still exists on Earth, but it's lacking the final power source, which is the annihilation wave, right? That last piece of energy that can be used to channel the whole thing, that you have Franklin just kind of being met by this disembodied voice. And he's ultimately just like, could you be quiet for a second, man? Like, could you shut the hell up? And that's when we end up finding out that it's basically his older self, right? Franklin from the future talking to his younger self. And so it's one of those things where he says, have you done what I asked? And Franklin, young Franklin says, yes, I keep it here next to my heart. But the problem is I had to use some of it. If I hadn't done that, then like the Mad Celestials would have killed everybody. And his adult self says, well, you can't help who you are. Hopefully it'll still be enough. And so literally his future self says it's almost time and then seemingly disappears away. At that point, the Future Foundation arrives at Saul's Anvil, which can we just say is one of the coolest names ever for a weapon. It's just like this giant just kind of building citadel that can destroy the Mad Celestials, or at least seems like it can. Now, the important thing here is that at Saul's Anvil, while they are missing the annihilation wave as the final power source, Johnny Storm and the Fantastic Four arrive. And because Johnny Storm is showing up with basically the cosmic control rod from the negative zone, which leads the annihilation wave, that's the power source they need, that now Saul's Anvil can be fired, right? The funny thing about this is that as you have young Franklin walking around with his future self kind of looks around and says, wow, right? Like the power of the sun channeled through a fixed point, buttressed by the earth itself. Saul's Anvil is the most powerful weapon ever constructed solely by man. It won't be enough. And as they're looking at all of this, the Mad Celestials arrive on the scene. And that's when future Franklin tells his younger self, this is going to hurt one bit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we switch over to arguably one of the best moments ever in the history of Marvel Comics. So with the Mad Celestials arriving on Earth and with Galactus arriving around the same time, the Mad Celestials traveled to greet Galactus. And as they analyze him, they realize he's a world devourer, right? He's a Galactus. That he's not the first Galactus or the only Galactus. There's a Galactus in every single universe around the multiverse. But they're like, leave, right? Like, this does not concern you. It's not your business. We're here to destroy a world. Go back and consume your own worlds and call it a day. And Galactus literally says, no, right? I'm not going anywhere. Look into my mind and see that I know your purpose. Look there and see that Galactus stands against you. And when they realize Galactus knows what their purpose is, which is not simply to destroy this Earth, but to destroy the entirety of the universe, and that Galactus would stand against all of them, and that if Galactus needed the help, he would seek out the other cosmic entities. The Celestials immediately attack him, right? Now, as soon as that battle pops off, it's really more than just anybody can understand. It's just beyond anything, right? One of the Kree soldiers is talking to the Supreme Intelligence like, man, what do we do here, right? We've got these cosmic entities who are facing off against each other. Just the sheer amount of radiation they're bleeding off is more than our ships can handle, let alone if they actually fire off an attack against one another and that attack misses and hits us. It'll destroy our ship and that'll be the end of it. The Supreme Intelligence is like, yeah, get us out of here, man. We got to go. And then you have like Black Bolt, who does the only thing that he's ever useful for, which is just like go that way, right? Run away from the fight, because Black Bolt's useless. Like, I can't ever do anything. But the thing about this is that it's crazy, because Galactus kills one of the Celestials, right? He kills one of the Mad Celestials, destroys this guy. In response to that, the remaining Mad Celestials merge. They combine. These guys go full on Megazord, son, right? When that happens, BAM! They destroy Galactus on the spot. They annihilate him, right? Galactus dead, right? Goes falling back down to the earth. That's the end of him. At that point, they turn their sights to like everybody else on Earth. Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four, the Future Foundation, right? It's drapes. Like, they come descending down, but in that moment, Reed fires off, like uses the energy sources of all those different areas, right? The negative zone, old Atlantis, the blue area of the moon, the Forever City. He channels the energy from all those places into Saul's anvil and then combines it with the energy of the sun and then fires it off against the Mad Celestials, which is not enough to destroy them, but it is enough to break them apart from their combined form. The problem with Saul's anvil is twofold. One, if they fire it again, they could destroy the world, right? They could literally crack the world because they're drawing energy from the world itself. The other part of that, though, is this a risk worth taking? Because the alternative is the Mad Celestials are going to kill them all. So in that moment, this is why I say, man, people are sleeping on Susan Storm, man. People don't understand how powerful Susan Storm is. She's like, everybody behind me, and just like puts up a force field and blocks the attack of the Mad Celestials. At that point, like, Reed Richards tells Johnny Storm, get as hot as you possibly can, hotter than the sun with a cosmic control rod. He goes flying in, he attacks one of the Mad Celestials. It's enough to damage him, but the Mad Celestial heals. Then like one of the other ones attacks Johnny. Johnny's out of the fight. So at that point, there's no cosmic control rod to be used by anybody. Now, Reed Richards is trying to get Saul's anvil back up and running. The weapon system's offline. So literally, it's curtains, it's drapes, right? There's no coming out of this, man. Like, the Mad Celestials are coming down, right? Susan Storm's holding up this force field, holding on for dear life, right? The Mad Celestials break through the force field, like they all fire at the same time. They destroy the force field, and they're like, there's the final interloper, right? Like, Reed Richards will kill him, will annihilate the universe, and that'll be the end of it, right? Susan Storm conjures up kind of like a force field rod and like sends it flying through one of their hands, and that's when we harken back. Sansa, man, let's tell you something. That's when we harken back, right? So like the statement that was made when Valeria from the future came to visit her mom in the past, right? And she said, the coming days are going to be dark and full of loss. It will feel like everything is going to fall apart, that it'll shatter and everything will end. Only you can hold us together. Can you be strong, mother? Stronger than you've ever been before. And it's one of these crazy moments because like Susan Storm feels like everything's about to end. Reed's out of commission. Franklin Richards and all of them are knocked out, right? Like, there's no one left to save them. Galactus is dead. This is it. It's just her standing there, just laying there with these Mad Celestials over top of her, getting ready to annihilate everything in existence. And they're just like, move yourself out of the way, move and live. We are destroying that final Reed. And she's like, nope, that's not gonna happen. But the crazy thing about this is we kind of get back to that monologue from her daughter where she says, there will be a moment when you're going to want to give up. You're going to want to let go. When you reach that point, look into the sky, look up and remember the price that was paid. And son, in one of the best moments ever in Marvel Comics history, son, Reed's like, what in the hell is that? Like, what's that light? And Susan's like, it's everything, Reed. It's our kids. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Franklin Richards from the future has returned. He has arrived in the present. And man, anybody who knows anything about the Fantastic Four, man, I'm telling you right now, the next video that we do, man, it's like the greatest moment ever in the history of Marvel Comics. Son. Man, I will leave y'all on this massive ass cliffhanger. Thank y'all for watching. I will catch you all later. Peace.
This is what you don't understand about me, bro. I'm really the GOAT. Like, I'm the GOAT out here, but you don't want these problems. I'm not even gonna talk to you, bro. Put your hands up. This is what I mean. You're scared. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I don't talk. I fight. Put your hands up. You're not even a little scared of me? Bruh, I'm gonna tell you one more time to put your hands up, or I'm gonna cave your chest through your back. Put your hands up. I'm gonna give you the one-on-one that you want so bad, bruh. Whose man's it? No, I'm no bitch. I mean, we can get it going. Hey, matter of fact, you ever heard about the gates, bruh? Yeah, I know about the 8 gates. Why? Nah, Heaven's Gates. Cause yeah, that's where I'm about to send your ass. Yeah. Oh, he's I'm gonna go to the side. Fuck it, bro. I'm no bitch. Let's go.
So Dr. Doom fights Kang the Conqueror and Mephisto in this story, and it's amazing. Okay, so check this out. So this initially picks up with something called the Antlion Collider, which is basically a black hole that's being created on the dark side of the moon. It's more of a controlled black hole. It's basically a minor singularity. But the reason why this is done is because the world, or at least the scientific community on Earth in the Marvel Universe, wants to start shifting more towards like nuclear power, different things like that. But with all the different forms of energy that are used, the big question that people find themselves asking is, what do we do with all this waste, right? This energy waste that we end up creating. Is it one of these things where we're going to just kind of keep on doing what we're doing, which is driving to the side of a hill, dumping our trash in the ground and then covering it up? Or are we going to come up with something that's a little more elegant and more befitting of our technological advancement? And so that's the idea behind this black hole, is to literally create a place whereby trash can be dumped essentially for infinity, right? Because black holes will break everything down on the atomic level, and it may end up filling up, but I mean, it would take an astronomically long amount of time in order for that to happen. The kicker to all this is that while these interviews are being done with members of the Antlion Collider community, they're also talking to Dr. Doom, and they ask him the question, like, what's your stance on this? Of course, Dr. Doom being Dr. Doom is like, it's gonna fail, right? This whole thing's being done by Reed Richards. As intelligent as he is, the biggest problem Reed Richards has is that he's sloppy, and because he's sloppy, this is going to end up failing disastrously. Now, the crazy thing about this is that you do have this guy named Steve, who's one of the guys conducting the interview, right? One of these reporters, and he literally says, many believe that you're just upset because you were left out on the project, and it has to be a failure because you weren't involved. Now, here's the thing, right? Anybody who knows anything about Dr. Doom in Marvel Comics knows that there are some things you just don't say, right? Like, pick your battles wisely. This is one of those, because when the interview ends, Dr. Doom just kind of leaves in a huff and then tells one of his guys, bring the reporter Steve to me. Bring that guy to me, right? Like, I want my hands on that guy. He's been mouthing off, and we need to help Steve understand his place in the bigger picture. And so one of the things that kind of goes on here, and it's cool, is that while that's taking place, you end up having Dr. Doom in his study. And while he's there, he's suddenly met by the arrival of Kang the Conqueror. Now, when it comes to Kang and Dr. Doom, this is one of those things where it's kind of you stay away, I stay away, right? In the sense that because these two guys are kind of distant relations to a degree, Kang doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of intentionally going after Victor Von Doom. The reason for that is that in Marvel Comics, it's never been fully established if Kang the Conqueror is the descendant of Reed Richards or the descendant of Victor Von Doom. But the risk here, and even Kang himself doesn't fully know, if he were to attack Dr. Doom and he were to kill him, he could actually prevent his own existence from happening. And so he doesn't really go directly against Dr. Doom and usually pick a fight, although the two have fought in the past. And the fights between Dr. Doom and Kang are usually amazing. Like, they're some of the coolest fights you're ever going to see, mostly because it's Kang the Conqueror brandishing all his technology and time travel escapades, and it's Dr. Doom with just like the best one-liners ever in the history of comic books. It's phenomenal. No, I will say Apocalypse has better one-liners, but Dr. Doom has great one-liners. He's got great lines, but it's just one of those things. But it's also because of the fact that Dr. Doom is so astronomically intelligent, and because he's so capable, and because his lust for power in a lot of ways mirrors that of Kang, there is a kind of respect that has grown between the two. Also because of the fact they've helped each other at different points in time. And so Kang being here is one of those things where it's a little mysterious. We don't really know why he's here in the first place. The nature of the conversation is really more just kind of banter back and forth between the two, and that's basically it. And then Kang ultimately just sort of teleports away. But what Dr. Doom ends up doing is, as he prepares for bed, that he actually ends up having this vision of a woman that we haven't discovered yet, and she and Dr. Doom have a family, right? Like, they have a whole full-on family. And so Dr. Doom really kind of going back to his quarters right after this sort of hallucination, which really even takes him by surprise, he ends up opening the door only to find that he's on the moon, where the entire Antlion project has gone awry. According to his prediction, it's manifested a full-scale black hole and is sucking everything in around it. Now, here's the thing to understand. If a black hole opened on the moon, we would die so fast we wouldn't even be able to understand what had happened, right? Like, literally, it would just probably be a flash of light, and like, that's it. That's all we would see. But the thing about this is that once Dr. Doom, of course, the next morning, he's basically told, hey, we have Steve, that he ends up going to find where Steve is basically just kind of strung up. And he's like, make sure he's fed today. tomorrow we might not feed him, but today make sure he's fed. And so as Dr. Doom is kind of meditating and focusing on this vision that he received, suddenly the nuclear arms of Latveria fire off. Right? They literally just start going off. Like all these nuclear weapons of Latveria shoot off. They head toward the Antlion collider and basically destroy the whole thing. And because they originated from Latveria, and because Dr. Doom had been like, yeah, man, this whole thing's gonna fail. The immediate suspect for all of this is Dr. Doom. And these guys come swooping in, right? It's shoot out of the OK Corral, right? Guns blazing. The first one to show up here is Union Jack. He doesn't really matter all that much, but he is cool, right? He's one of these characters where he never really gets a whole lot of appearances in Marvel Comics, but he is cool, and it is interesting to see him from time to time. But the funny thing about this is that while this attack's going on, suddenly Victor Von Doom is shot by Agent Zero. Now, Agent Zero is a lot more capable. Maverick was one of the original inductees into the Weapon X program alongside Wolverine. So while he's not necessarily on the same level as Wolverine regarding like adamantium bonding and all that kind of stuff, he is probably one of the single greatest assassins and mercenaries in the entirety of the Marvel universe. It's crazy how good he is. And he even goes as far as to say Interpol's reward, right? The International Police, their reward just shot up for Victor Von Doom. Like literally, everybody's got it out for this guy. Everybody's coming for this guy. And so where Dr. Doom is able to initially get the upper hand on both Union Jack as well as Maverick, he had instructed his staff immediately issue a surrender, right? Immediately tell them, we're surrendering here, because the worst thing we can do is to actually face off against these forces, because what it does is it implies guilt, right? Like it would indicate like, yes, we launched the attack, and I'll be damned if anybody's gonna come to Latveria and get me, you're never gonna take me alive, right? I mean, it's that kind of thing, right? And so ultimately he ends up basically just surrendering to various forces that show up here. Now, once he's taken, he's actually brought in by a combination of different things. The first two are Silver Sable and Amy Chen. Now, these two are particularly important, but only in certain circles in Marvel Comics. So Silver Sable runs a group called the Wild Pack, which is one part information brokering and one part mercenary work. So they are guys that basically travel the world. They pick up people who are supposed to be picked up by various governmental agencies or corporations or what have you. But because Silver Sable is networked with so many different organizations and groups out there, she's basically a person tied into a ton of information. So even if she's not necessarily coming after you, if somebody else is coming after you, they can actually hit up Silver Sable. And if they're able to offer the right price, she'll give them the information that they need. The other person that's brought here is Dr. Stephen Strange. Now, the reason why Stephen Strange is here is one, because this story takes place before he died, and two, because as most people who are familiar with Dr. Doom in Marvel Comics know, Dr. Doom and Dr. Strange have a very strong history together. The most notable instance of the two of them working together was when they traveled to basically the realm of Mephisto. They traveled to Hell in the story Triumph and Torment in order to free Dr. Doom's mother from Mephisto, right? To free her soul so it could go to heaven, which they successfully did. And in fact, that's something that I want you to keep in the back of your mind, because we'll talk about that again in this story. But Dr. Doom's various mystical abilities are enough that they can match the powers of Dr. Doom. So if you want to try some crazy, Jedi mind trick mysticism stuff, Dr. Doom would be there to basically bring it to an end. But as we know, Dr. Doom has no real intention of doing that. Now, the irony behind all this, and this is the important thing to understand, based on the visions that Dr. Doom's been getting, which he doesn't really know the origin of it, and we don't really even know the origin of it at the moment, is that these visions indicate somewhere along the line, Dr. Doom does something which ushers in an era of peace all across the world and literally brings a kind of utopia that had never been seen before. And so that's why Dr. Doom, one, allows himself to surrender, because he's kind of curious about where these visions are leading, but two, Kang the Conqueror suddenly appears inside this ship where Dr. Doom's at. And it's one of those things where literally Kang's like, I've seen your future, right? Years from now, you're the magnanimous leader of an eternally peaceful Earth, and it would be the most preferable Earth for me to conquer. And so that's kind of the on-running theme. Like, Kang the Conqueror will appear more over the course of the story. And really, if anything, he kind of shows up. I mean, Dr. Doom does fight him a couple times, but he shows up more often than not in order to help Doom, because he's like, the things that you're going to do are basically going to make the Earth a utopia, but it's also going to make the Earth weaker, and it makes it easier for me to conquer. So like, here's some stuff to help you, because in helping you, I'm helping myself, right? Like, that's really what he does for a good chunk of the story. And it's hilarious the times that he shows up. It's funny. But one of the things that Doom says is, okay, if this future you see is true and it matches the visions that I've been having, then free me, right? Like, if you want to be able to conquer the Earth in the future because of what I'll end up doing, then free me and get me out of here. And so one of the things that they do is they sabotage the engines of the vessel, and then they basically escape. Now, you guys are probably asking yourself, why don't they just teleport out of it? The reality is, when you're dealing with Kang, Marvel plays it fast and loose, right? If Kang basically destroyed or sabotaged the engines, it's because in looking over all the different timelines, it's the only one where they successfully escape. That's kind of the undercurrent that Marvel uses, right? Like, Kang does everything he does for a particular reason. But the reality is that once this is done, basically Kang teleports away and Dr. Doom casts some mysticism in order to save himself. Following that, he literally goes underground. He dons a kind of mask and hides himself, and he takes off to the city of New York. Now, when he gets there, he basically ends up encountering what are these sort of visions of Morgan Le Fay. Now, these visions come in the form of her appearing in like Times Square on TV screens, different things like that. Only Dr. Doom can see her. This is one of those elements of Marvel Comics that's really cool. Morgan Le Fay has been around for an exceedingly long time. And in fact, she's been around about the same time as Merlin in Marvel Comics. And the thing about this is she actually originates from Atlantis, or at least the Atlantean territories, before the Great Cataclysm during the Second Host, when the Celestials showed up and then attacked the Deviants. That is to say, she's been around for thousands of years, and she's incredibly powerful. She's not the most powerful person ever, but it's kind of a loose-knit family between like her and Dr. Doom and Doctor Strange and like the Scarlet Witch and Brother Voodoo, people like that. Just these people that practice like magic and mysticism, which is really weird when you think about it, because like there was a time when Morgan Le Fay and Dr. Doom banged, so that's kind of cool. But the thing about this is that while all that's going on, what you end up having is Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, while it's off panel, he comes to the realization that if Dr. Doom has actually escaped and Dr. Doom's out there on the lam, then what they need is someone who's every bit as intelligent as Dr. Doom, meaning this person is like kind of shares the #1 spot for the smartest person in the Marvel Universe, but is also immensely powerful enough that they can stand toe to toe with Dr. Doom. And so what you end up having is Herbie the robot, who's kind of like the robotic assistant of the Fantastic Four, basically traveling to Cornell and meeting with Adam Brashear and bringing Adam Brashear in as a person that can actually capture Dr. Doom. Now, a lot of people are going to ask the question, how in the world is it that like Blue Marvel is on the same level as Dr. Doom? Is this just something you're making it up, Rob? I'm not making this up at all. And the reason why I say that is because there's a point when Blue Marvel is meeting with Herbie, and at that point, Blue Marvel's like, okay, so Reed Richards is finally taking me seriously, and Herbie's like, well, you were the top available, right? Like you were the next best choice, which is kind of a crappy way to put it. But then Herbie also goes on to say, you match Dr. Doom in intellect and strength, especially since he's without his powers. Now, the way that Herbie's drawing this information is based on the information that Reed Richards has in his database. What that means is that in Marvel Comics, what Christopher Cantwell is establishing here, that Reed Richards is one, well aware of who Adam Brashear is, which is something that we already knew, and then two, looking at Adam Brashear, the Blue Marvel, top to bottom, from his intelligence to his strength to his powers and so on, Reed has basically established that Blue Marvel is as intelligent and capable as Dr. Doom. What this means is that Blue Marvel shares the #1 spot as the smartest person in the world with Reed Richards, Dr. Doom, and Valeria Richards, right? It's a really cool moment. This is one of those things that you're probably going to see people referencing when other folks ask the question, where does Blue Marvel reside in terms of intelligence, strength, so on and so forth. And so following this, what you end up doing is picking back up up with Doom while he's traveling with Morgan Le Fay, and they travel to meet a guy called the Witness. Now, this is the one and only appearance of the Witness, at least in this form that I'm aware of in Marvel Comics, but the idea behind this guy is he can basically look into the eyes of another person and then see exactly what their future is. And what the Witness says is that Dr. Doom is going to die, and it's the saddest day on Earth. It's absolutely beautiful, but we don't really find out exactly how this death happens, but what it does seem to do is kind of fall in line with the visions that Dr. Doom's been having, where he becomes this person that literally saves the world. Then it would be a tragic and sad day because the world would have lost somebody significant to them. The kicker is that before any of this goes down and any other questions can be asked, Dr. Doom is killed on the spot, and he's actually assassinated, and the person who takes him out is none other than Taskmaster Tony Masters. I told you this story gets amazing. Now again, in this moment, what ends up happening is because Dr. Doom is by all standards of measurement dead, he wakes up in hell. He wakes up in the realm of Mephisto, and traveling there, he basically dons this kind of hell armor, which I gotta tell you guys, is probably the second most badass Dr. Doom's ever looked. The only thing better than this was when he was God King Doom, so he basically had his normal outfit, but it was all white, which was dope, and I'm surprised no one's cosplayed as God King Doom at any Comic-Cons. It kind of astounds me, but this looks dope. Oh my God, like it looks so beast. But what ends up happening is Dr. Doom comes face to face with Mephisto. Now, the thing about this is Dr. Doom tells him right off the bat, I'm not supposed to be here. And the response of Mephisto is, that's what they all say, but I'm glad to have your soul now and forever. And Dr. Doom immediately attacks Mephisto. Now, here's the thing to understand about Mephisto, right? This guy, it's a misnomer when it comes to how powerful Mephisto is. With Mephisto himself, he is at the peak of his power when he's in his own realm, but he's not indestructible and he's not unstoppable. But the thing about this is that Dr. Doom is immensely powerful. The reality here is Dr. Doom's not powerful enough to overcome Mephisto, to beat him in his own realm like this. And so what kind of goes on here is a bit of bouncing back and forth where Mephisto starts playing games with Dr. Doom. Now, one of the other things that I want to establish here, and it's really kind of more of a background of what's taking place, is that you do have the kingdom of Latveria where Dr. Doom normally resides. What you have next to it is a place called Symkaria. And Symkaria has kind of been a war-torn place for quite some time. Only recently has it actually established any measure of an organized government. And so what's going on here is that Symkaria is actually organizing battle formations, and they're in the process of trying to conquer Latveria while Dr. Doom is not there. So that's an important plot point to keep in mind. Again, we're not going to be talking a lot about that, but we will talk about it at the end because it does become incredibly important at the end of this. But the thing about this, kind of focusing on the here and now, what Mephisto does is he tells Dr. Doom, if you can convince Valeria that you deserve to live, then you can return to your life. Now, here's the thing. Valeria, there's two different ones. There's Valeria Richards, who's the daughter of Reed Richards, and then there's a different Valeria. So no, we're not talking about, Valeria Richards, right? This 11-year-old kid that Dr. Doom was in love with. That's weird, right? That's weird and creepy and really, really gross. Valeria is a character who's exceedingly old school in Marvel Comics. And in fact, she goes all the way back to Marvel Superheroes number 20 in 1969. Valeria was a person who lived in the same camp that Dr. Doom did when he was a little kid. They were basically, they kind of fell in love as teenagers as much as anybody could. But as Dr. Doom became consumed by vengeance and power, Valeria basically left him behind, right? She just didn't want to be a part of that life. And as a result of that, she eventually fled. Dr. Doom caught up to her and basically convinced her that he was going to leave all that madness behind, and all he wanted was her, love, and a life. And so she ultimately bought into it. What was really going on in probably one of the most just amazing stories that Mark Waid ever wrote in the Fantastic Four back in volume 3, back in 2003, the idea here is that what Dr. Doom had done is he had actually tricked Valeria, and he effectively sold her soul behind her back so that he could attain mystical armor, right? Enhance his powers. And so when that happened, her soul was sent to the realm of Mephisto. It was a pretty shady thing to do. And that's why Mephisto makes this claim. If you can convince the only woman in the world who ever loved you, that you betrayed her, that you deserve life, then I will give it to you. And that's the crazy thing, is Victor Von Doom tries to do it. And he even tries to rationalize his actions. No. I needed that because I'm going to make the world a better place. I'm going to make the world a way more interesting place. Your soul, right? Eternal damnation for you. That was a sacrifice I was willing to make in order to make that happen, right? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The reality here is he's not really apologetic for it. And so in spewing all this stuff about everything he's seen, suddenly you end up having Valeria that transforms into a demon, really Mephisto, that's kind of been impersonating her, and then like really tormenting Dr. Doom. And it's like, I've seen this life that you say you've seen, Dr. Doom. I see how you save everything and so on and so forth. You're never going to attain it. That's going to be your damnation here, right? Your eternal torment is going to be that you know without a shadow of a doubt that your one dream in this world actually comes true, that you become this leader of this earth, you lead it into utopia, you become everything that you believe yourself to be, and you're never going to be able to attain it. That's going to be your hell. And so literally a fight breaks out between the two, and it's pretty knockdown, drag out. But in the middle of all this, Mistress Death appears and is like, done, this fight's over, right? He will return to his life, Mephisto. Now here's the thing, even Mephisto himself, regardless of any level of power he has, is not stupid enough to fight Mistress Death. She's the literal living embodiment of death. All she has to do is will it, and Mephisto ceases to exist. That's it. I mean, that's literally what you're talking about here. So not even he is stupid enough to invoke her ire. And the funny thing about this is that where Dr. Doom asks, right, like, are you doing this so that I can truly go back to Earth and become the person that saves it? And her response is, no, it's because you will become my greatest servant of all. You will bring a level of death and destruction that the world has never seen. It's a crazy thing, because what ends up happening is that after this whole circumstance arrives, or really ends, that Dr. Doom wakes up in the home of Morgan Le Fay, who had taken his body back to her apartment, and of course, the two of them are joined by Blue Marvel. Now, as soon as Dr. Doom sees Adam Brashear, he immediately fires on him and gets him out of there, because Dr. Doom knows how powerful Adam Brashear is. He knows how capable he is, and if a true knockdown, drag-out fight between the two happens, that given his current circumstance, it's highly unlikely that Dr. Doom will be able to overpower Adam Brashear and basically keep him from being arrested, right? So that's why he literally sends him flying in the moment to just sort of get him out of the way. At that point, yet again, Kang the Conqueror pops up. Kang the Conqueror appears. And it's one of those things where it's kind of an information brokering, right? At that point, Dr. Doom's like, okay, Kang, I need you to rattle your brain. I need you to tell me what timelines there are where I was successfully killed in this moment, here and now. Not 5 days ago, right? Not 50 minutes ago. At this moment right now, right? I need to know who it was that killed me. And the response of Kang is, it was Taskmaster, and he was hired by Advanced Idea Mechanics. And so what literally ends up happening here is Dr. Doom finds the base of Advanced Idea Mechanics, right? He literally breaks in, he steals their weapons, and starts shooting the place up. He kills everyone, right? He like every single soldier they have, they all die. Now, here's the thing. I had previously stated that Dr. Doom, without his powers, is basically useless. I was wrong, right? I was 100% wrong. Unlike most people on the internet, I can admit when I'm wrong when I think I'm wrong. Unfortunately, I usually never think I'm wrong, so I usually never admit when I am wrong. Just kidding. But here's one of the things, right? I never really considered Dr. Doom to be capable when he didn't have his arms and armament. This dude's a beast, man. This guy's rolling through here with just the biggest gun I've ever seen, killing everyone he sees, right? Just overpowering them all. He duplicates himself several times over, and all those different forces, right? All those different versions of himself start attacking all these different soldiers. So he still uses his powers to a degree, but at the end of the day, it comes down to him and Taskmaster. Now, this is when you really get to see what Dr. Doom is capable of. I never believed he was good when it came to hand-to-hand combat, mostly because you never really see him doing hand-to-hand combat. It's always like, you know, I'm Dr. Doom and magical spells and just badassery all over the place. That's usually all you ever see. But seeing him facing off against Taskmaster like this and overcoming Tony Masters is impressive as hell, right? It's a pretty cool thing, because remember, when you're fighting against Taskmaster, you're not just fighting Tony Masters, you're fighting everyone Tony Masters has ever fought, right? So you're fighting Captain America, Spider-Man, Deadpool, Wolverine, like all these different characters, because it's a Rolodex. He just pulls those fighting styles out. And depending on the circumstance, especially when he was fighting Black Panther, he actually merged all those fighting styles into one, to where he would punch like Captain America, but he would dodge like Spider-Man, and he would kick like Deadpool. It was cool, man. It was just one of the coolest things. It's just some amazing moments that you see in Marvel Comics. And so once Dr. Doom gets the upper hand on Taskmaster, knowing that Taskmaster's mission was quote unquote finished with Dr. Doom, the next thing he wants to know is, who are you supposed to go after next, right? Because he literally asked him, who hired Advanced Idea Mechanics to kill me, right? That's what I want to know. Who hired them to take me out? Who hired you to take me out? And where he initially won't give that explanation, the reality here is Dr. Doom's smart enough to know that if Taskmaster is going after Dr. Doom, then Taskmaster is also going after people associated with Dr. Doom. And so that's when he's like, I want to know who this is. Who is it you're supposed to go after next? And that's when he says, it's Frazina, right? It's a woman named Frazina. And at that moment, Dr. Doom basically ends up realizing there's a much bigger thing going on here, and immediately goes after that chick, right? Immediately goes after Frazina. Now, the other thing that takes place here is kind of working his ranks up, right? Basically continuing to take out Taskmaster, as well as what's seemingly the rest of Advanced Idea Mechanics. He's met by the arrival of MODOK. Now, MODOK doesn't really offer much in the way of a challenge here for Dr. Doom. He kind of does, but he kind of doesn't. He tries to shoot him with like a mental blast. Dr. Doom has the shield of Taskmaster and his sword. He just stabs MODOK in the chest. But this killing is also a long time coming, because remember, MODOK was part of Intelligentsia, which was the organization that stripped Dr. Doom of his intelligence. If you're not familiar with that storyline, we're actually covering it right now in my videos on Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. So we'll post a link to that video down in the playlist. But in the midst of all this, you end up picking up on Liberty Island. Now, Liberty Island is a place that has these kind of weather stations that are being created or being used by this woman named Frazina. And the idea behind this is it's basically an attempt, even if only in a smaller localized space, to basically control weather. In Marvel Comics, that kind of stuff happens all the time. It's not really a new thing. It's not really landmark. It's just something that Christopher Cantwell's throwing in here to show what she's doing. But in the midst of all this, one of the things that we learn is she is from Latveria. And we know this because there are discussions that take place between her and the people around her, where they ask questions like, you know, is Dr. Doom really an effective leader? You know, is it a good thing that he's gone? That kind of stuff. And she's like, understand, right? The law of sedition and rendition. Those individuals who speak ill of Latveria and its leader, especially Latverian citizens, will literally be tossed in some kind of a re-education camp. I don't want to be one of those guys, so I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing, right? That kind of a thing. It's just kind of bred into them in terms of how they function. The other part of this here is that while you do have Dr. Doom in a library who's basically reading up on Frazina, the reason why this name is so significant comes when he's visited by Kang the Conqueror yet again. And when the two of them really start talking, is Dr. Doom saying, in these visions that I had, the woman that I end up marrying is Frazina. Like, that's the person that I end up marrying and that I end up having a life with. So the reality is, if she's a target of Advanced Idea Mechanics and they're looking to kill her by using Taskmaster or somebody, I've got to find a way to keep her alive. She's supposed to end up becoming my wife. And so this is a really significant moment here. And there's actually history between Dr. Doom and Frazina indirectly. And the reason why this happens is because you do have a little bit of a skirmish that takes place between Dr. Doom and Kang the Conqueror. But the significance of this really comes in the form of the fact that when Dr. Doom ends up visiting Frazina, she initially rebukes him, right? I mean, at first she's kind of like, oh my God, it's Lord Dr. Doom, you know, that kind of a thing. But once the veil goes away and he tells her, just address me like a regular person, she doesn't like him. And in fact, she hates him because he tells her, like, I've had visions and you and I are supposed to get married, which is one way to propose, right? Just like run up on a random chick. Hey, random woman over there. I've had visions. We're supposed to get married. You want to get hitched, right? I mean, that's not going to work. But the reason why Frazina hates Dr. Doom is because there was a point during Doom War when Dr. Doom had invaded Wakanda and stole its vibranium that a journalist in Latveria had spoken out against Dr. Doom because of that. And what Dr. Doom had done is he had jailed that guy basically for sedition, right? For speaking ill of Latveria and of Dr. Doom. And that guy is still serving a prison sentence. That guy is the father of Frazina. And that's why she hates Dr. Doom, because the guy was just doing his job, and the price he paid is basically a life of imprisonment. And even Dr. Doom goes as far as to say, I should have had your father executed for what he did. Just be happy in the fact that I didn't, and I was feeling particularly generous. Now, that's the most Dr. Doom thing to say, to be honest with you. But in the midst of all this, a couple things happen. The first is that you basically have the arrival of Adam Brashear alongside Herbie, and then you have the arrival of Silver Sable and Victorious. Now, I've kind of held off on talking about them up to this point. The way things had played out with their characters is that Victorious was kind of like the second in command to Dr. Doom. Whenever he's not in Latveria, she's the one who runs the show. And so where you basically had the Simkarians who were attempting to invade Latveria, successfully did so and then took over the country, that Victorious was basically ousted. But the other part of this is that Silver Sable, being as smart as she is, had realized something else is going on here, and she was actually being used. And so she and Victorious worked together to try to find Dr. Doom so they could basically put all their information together and figure out what the bigger picture is. Now, of course, Blue Marvel being here is just for the purpose of trying to, to grab Dr. Doom. And it's really an amazing moment because a fight breaks out between the two, and Adam Brashear holds his own against Dr. Doom. And that's one of the things that I hope you notice here. In terms of Dr. Doom facing off against Blue Marvel, it's really him just trying to hold off the power of Adam Brashear. And this is due to the fact that in this moment, Dr. Doom is not as powerful as Adam Brashear. It's a pretty cool moment, right? It's a pretty cool and badass thing where literally Blue Marvel is more powerful than Dr. Doom in this moment. Now, of course, yet again, Kang the Conqueror shows up. I told you he would show up at like the funniest moments and at the most inopportune times. What's really cool though is that this is an exceedingly opportune time. He shows up here with just this insane weapon and it's like, okay, Dr. Doom, this is for you because remember, you gotta live so that you can make the world easier to conquer for me. Like, I told you that's his whole motivation is showing up here strictly for that. And in fact, what you end up having is Adam Brashear, who immediately attacks Kang the Conqueror because Kang the Conqueror destroys Herbie. And so in that moment, Adam Brashear, like the Blue Marvel, kills Kang the Conqueror, right? He kills him on the spot, just incinerates that guy. And that's when Dr. Doom's like, okay, yeah, we got to get out of here. Like, we got to find a way to bail. The other part of this, though, is that no one's prepared for what comes next. Because what happens here is that with Kang the Conqueror, it wasn't simply just a weapon that he gave Dr. Doom. What he also gave him was an advanced suit of armor from his own timeline, right? From Kang's own timeline. In doing that, what it does is it restores Victor Von Doom back to his full power. He's got the full brunt of his technology combined with his mysticism and advanced weaponry from Kang the Conqueror. Blue Marvel's like, look, here's the thing, Doom. We have to put these grievances aside. This black hole is going to emerge. Everything's going nuts with the Antleon Collider. We have to do something. And the response of Dr. Doom is no. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go home and I'm going to take care of my country. Reed Richards wanted to be the one to run the show, then let Reed Richards run the show. And if the entirety of the project goes awry and a black hole singularity opens at the moon, I will deal with it and I will take care of it, but I will take care of it because I'm better than he is. But I want the world to know that Reed Richards is a failure. I want the world to know that he's nowhere near as capable as I am. Literally, Dr. Doom is willing to potentially see the Earth destroyed just to make Reed Richards look bad. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.